You've just done something well, said the right thing, handled something with unexpected grace, made people laugh in a way that actually landed. And instead of feeling good about it, there's this quiet thought underneath everything. Was that actually me? Not a crisis, just a gap. Like someone else showed up, did the thing, and now you're back to being whatever you are when no one's watching. By the end of this, you'll understand why that feeling is more common than almost anyone admits, why it has almost nothing to do with being dishonest, and why the people who feel it most persistently tend to be the most genuinely present in any room they're in. That's what this video is building toward. And the answer is stranger than it looks. The obvious explanation is impostor syndrome. Close, but not quite right. Impostor syndrome is about competence. You're afraid you're less capable than people believe, and you're waiting to be found out. This is different. This isn't about whether you deserve to be in the room. It's about which version of you is actually the real one. The one who kept the room laughing at the dinner party. The one who sat quietly for most of the evening and barely said a word. The one who was surprisingly direct with someone they barely knew. The one who held it together during the crisis and then cried alone in the car. All recognizable. None of them quite landing as the definitive one. We tend to assume that feeling real is the natural state, and performing is the exception. For some people, it's closer to the opposite. The performing feels constant. The real version is the thing they can't quite locate. And the performance isn't a lie. Every version that shows up is genuine in the moment. The unsettling thing isn't that you're being fake, it's that there are too many real things, and none of them seems to be the primary one. Picture this. Not a big party, just 8 or 9 people at a friend's apartment on a Friday evening. And over 2 hours, you watch yourself adjust, almost automatically. Warmer with the friend who seems to be having a rough week. More dry and clipped with the one who prefers that. More careful around the couple who are clearly going through something. None of it calculated. Each version is real in the moment. Nobody is being deceived. But when you leave and you're driving home, there's a question that comes up and doesn't quite go away. Which one of those was me? Was I the one people seemed to like tonight? Or was I the one standing slightly outside all of it, watching, noticing which adjustment to make next? Most people have a version of this. For some people, it isn't occasional, it's just the weather. Psychologists have been studying this pattern for decades. What they found is that people vary enormously in something called self-monitoring, which is the degree to which you track social cues and adjust your behavior accordingly. High self-monitors read rooms naturally. They register what's expected, what's needed, who wants more warmth, who needs more space, before they've said a word. They calibrate without deciding to. For a long time, this looked like an uncomplicated advantage. High self-monitors tend to be well-liked, effective across very different social contexts. The ability to show up differently for different people is genuinely useful. Most of the time, it doesn't seem to cost anything. But there is a cost. The cost is identity coherence, the sense that there's a stable, continuous you underneath all the adjustments. When you've adapted fluently across a dozen different contexts in a week, which one was the baseline? The question starts to feel harder than it should. Psychology has a term for the uncomfortable end of this: identity diffusion. Not a crisis exactly, but a persistent absence of a fixed center. Multiple versions of yourself that feel equally real, equally provisional, with no obvious thread connecting them. This doesn't mean you're incoherent as a person. It means your sense of self is highly context-dependent, which sounds like a problem, but it's a fairly accurate description of how identity works for most people. You just notice it more clearly, and more uncomfortably, than most. But that's only half of what this feels like. The other half is stranger. Here's where it gets genuinely unexpected. The first finding that surprises people? The feeling peaks after success, not failure. Not the conversation that went badly, the conversation that went perfectly. The moment where someone saw you clearly and responded warmly. That's when the gap widens. They responded to something I performed well, which means they don't quite know me yet. Competence and being truly known seem to pull in opposite directions. The second finding? This is most common in people who grew up needing to calibrate early, not as a choice, but as a requirement. Households where the atmosphere could shift without notice, and reading the room was a practical skill before it was a social one. Families navigating two cultures at once. Being the kid who was somehow different and figured out how to adjust before understanding why. The child who kept the peace at dinner. The teenager who moved between friend groups without quite belonging to any of them. The adult who's never been quite sure which version to bring home. The adaptability came from somewhere. It almost always did. The third finding, and the one that tends to land hardest, this almost always coexists with genuine connection. The people who know you aren't wrong about you. The version you show them is real. The problem is that there doesn't seem to be a version that persists when the context disappears. No one left in the room on a quiet Tuesday afternoon who feels like the definitive answer. Which means the loneliness that comes with this isn't loneliness from other people. It's loneliness from yourself. But there's a gap between understanding the mechanism and recognizing what it looks like in daily life. And most people skip right past that part. The most visible pattern is social format switching. Different groups, different versions. Not a deliberate act, just different aspects that surface in different contexts. People who know you from one area of your life are sometimes genuinely surprised by who shows up in another. The second pattern is quieter. The post-conversation review. Not the anxious replay of, did I say something wrong? Something more puzzling. The exchange felt easy, real, unguarded. Probably the best version of you available. And you leave asking, was that actually me? Or was that what the situation called for? The third pattern? Difficulty describing yourself. Not from false modesty, but genuine uncertainty. Interests feel borrowed from different periods of your life. Opinions feel provisional. The question, what kind of person are you? Produces a real pause. Not because you're being vague, but because you're not sure the answer is a single thing. Most people just pick something and move on. For some people, that choice feels quietly dishonest in a way they can't explain. Here's what might actually matter after all of this. The sense that you're always playing a role doesn't mean you don't have a self. It might mean you have more self than any single context can hold. Every version that showed up, the one at the dinner party, the one at work, the quiet one with nothing to perform, all of them are you, not masks. One real thing at a time, showing up where it fits. The people who feel this most persistently tend to be the ones who are most fully present wherever they are. That's not a deficiency. It's a specific kind of attentiveness to other people that most people spend years trying to develop. The cost of it, the gap, the question on the drive home, is just what that attentiveness looks like from the inside. The next time that quiet gap comes up, the one that probably made you click on this, you'll have a name for what it is. Not a solution, just a description of something real about how identity works for some people. The feeling of playing a role, of watching yourself from a slight distance, has a name. It has a mechanism. It tends to show up most in people with a very specific set of qualities. Knowing that doesn't close the gap, but it changes what the gap means.